In his letter to the Romans, Paul said that there were Gentiles who were living without a knowledge of the law, who were actually fulfilling the law without knowing it. The Apostle Paul in the letter to the Romans said that in the process, these Gentiles, they actually became a law unto themselves. They actually welcomed a relationship with God without knowing it. They lived in ignorance of God and in a relationship with Him at the same time. And the reality is that's true about all of us. All of us are called to have a relationship with God without fully understanding everything that's true about our God. And Jesus said at the Last Supper, while speaking about the people who were about to execute Him the next day, that they would not be guilty of sin if He had not come and spoken to them. You see, the reality is that God does not expect us to understand things He hasn't spoken to us about yet. God does not expect us to understand things that He hasn't revealed to our hearts and our minds at this point in our lives. The reality is that God's expectations of us are not unfair. God's expectations of us are perhaps the most realistic expectations in the world. God's expectation of us is just that we would say yes to Him as best we can today with the information we have about Him today. To have a relationship with God right now, you don't need to have more information than you already do about God right now. You just need to make a decision to begin a conversation with that God right now and welcome Him into your life right now. God will come into your life right now today, no matter what questions are bouncing around in your heart and your mind. God will come into your life right now today, no matter how ignorant you are of anything about Him. You see, God doesn't need you to be a scholar to have a relationship with Him. In fact, it's quite the opposite. God needs you to be like a little child who takes the little bit of information that he has about his Father in heaven and welcomes a relationship with Him in the midst of all the mystery and ignorance. You know, I think sometimes we make a personal relationship with God much more complicated than it ever needed to be. I think sometimes we make things more complicated because I think it actually gives us a sense of control. I think living outside of mystery and living with the facts gives us a sense of control over our lives and the world around us, and even control over our relationship with God. And yet a relationship with God is fundamentally the opposite of seizing control. In fact, the word prayer means to let go of control and let go of our plans and accept God's plans. The word prayer, which is what a relationship with God is really all about, the word prayer really just means letting go. And the funny thing is that when we let go of control and when we let go of needing all the answers, God, by His grace and His Holy Spirit, somehow fills our heart and our minds with the answers that we need. You know, Jesus Christ said to seek first the kingdom of heaven, and then everything else would be given to us. He didn't say find out all the answers about God and then seek a relationship with God. He said seek a relationship with God. Seek the kingdom of heaven, and then everything else, including the answers you need about God, you'll have in time. So don't put off having a relationship with God today because you don't have all the answers about God today. If you put off a relationship with God today because you don't have all the answers about Him today, you're going to put off a relationship with God tomorrow too, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. If you're waiting to have all the answers about God, you'll be waiting until you see God face to face. And frankly, that might be too late.